Hey, this is the World Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is the question of why do Africans and African Americans not get along? So for this video, I'm going to explain the reason why both groups do not get along in a simple and straightforward way, a no BS way, compared to a lot of the other information that's being put out online that just comes off as propaganda. So now that I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to the topic of why Africans and African Americans do not get along, as well as a solution to later on how we both can get along, is that first and foremost, when it comes to the obvious question here, why do Africans and African Americans not get along, is simply down to the fact that both sides have negative stereotypes about each other, okay? Which, of course, no surprise, has been perpetuated by the media, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, when it comes to this particular issue related to both particular groups, what I've constantly noticed, especially being someone in the African diaspora, especially someone of Caribbean descent, so I'm very, very well aware of this stuff, is that a lot of African people, when they come over here and they immigrant over here, tend to get made fun of by you know, black people over here. Okay, black people over here, of Caribbean descent tend to make fun of black people of African descent, okay? And from what I'm aware, in the United States, when it's African Americans, it's even worse, okay? So when it comes to that particular issue, I have noticed a lot of Africans tend to get made fun of. And this is just from one side of the story, okay? People tend to make fun of them, say you guys live in huts and this and that, and so on and so forth. So the truth of the matter is, a lot of Africans tend to be put down and talked down on. And from the other side, from what I've heard, a lot of Africans, um, you know, tend to say about people in the African diaspora is that a lot of us are lazy, we're ghetto, and so on and so forth. And they have a name for people in the African diaspora, particularly for African Americans, which is known as a kata, which is a derogatory term for black people who are of African American descent, as it literally translates to cotton picker, which obviously we all know, slavery was something that happened to African Americans as well as all, the rest of black people in African diaspora. So, of course, making fun of them, or just directly for that matter, calling them a slave, you know, is obviously very disrespectful. So the truth of the matter is, the reason why, when it comes to this particular situation, like I was getting at before, to sum up my main point here, is that it's just that both sides have negative views of each other, which are perpetuated simply by, of course, no surprise, white people, particularly. Because the thing is, I've actually learned about history, for that matter, okay? From what I'm aware, is that from what I've heard, Jamaicans back in the days, and same with African Americans, were actually taught that they are superior to Africans, okay? That's what they were taught. They're superior to Africans. Africans are this and that and this and that. And a lot of Africans on the other side were taught that they are superior to you know, African Americans, as well as black people in the African diaspora, for that matter, okay? Because we're descendants of slaves. So, so of course, slavery is a derogatory thing. So, of course, saying that you're a descendant of a slave is very disrespectful, for that matter, okay? So, the truth of the matter is, on both sides, there are definitely um stereotypes we have about each other, okay? Which, of course, is a classic divide and conquer strategy, which, when you look at the history of Europe, have been doing forever. And it's one of the biggest ways that they were able to conquer so many different empires and so many different peoples, for that matter, is that they always use divide and conquer. Look it up yourself, okay? So the truth of the matter is, that is the reason why we don't get along, is because we have negative stereotypes and views of each other on both sides, which, when you actually really look at it, for that matter, okay, to be quite honest with you, the truth of the matter is, when it comes to that particular situation and issue, you know um you know, it definitely is the main cause of the rift between our two groups. Because the truth of the matter is, of course, when you look at that particular thing, you know, it just comes down to basic human psychology 101. If you're dealing with a situation like this, you know, where people are constantly making fun of you, and both sides do it. So no side is right in this situation. Both sides do it. But yeah, like I was saying before, um if both sides are constantly making fun of, you know, each other in one way or shape or form, and of course knowing how human psychology and just even certain individuals for that matter, you can only do that stuff for so long until eventually at some point people are going to get tired of the jokes and are going to get very angry and very unhappy about the jokes and disrespect that they are getting for that matter. Okay, just like if you're African, you can only hear so many jokes about this and that, you know, about you guys live in safaris, you know, with lions and all that type of stuff going around all over the place for so long until eventually you're gonna start kind of getting tired of it and getting pissed about it. And not to mention, just generally speaking, everyone naturally interprets situations differently. Some people might find it a bit funny, some people might naturally get offended. And on the other hand, vice versa, you know? So the truth of the matter is, for that matter, when it comes to this particular situation, it is simply a classic case of simply divide and conquer. White people did that stuff, and of course, that they no longer have to do that stuff, but that way of thinking is still implanted in the minds of people. Okay, and that's the truth of the matter. And yes, it is definitely something that's been going on for a long time. Because even when you look at those, like yeah, going back in time, you know, like those things from like the early 1900s, you know, to mid 1900s, you know, the 20th century, you know, I remember I used to watch some of the stuff when you used to say things like, for example, you know, call a black person back then, you know, say that, you know, you're from Africa. Some people would act very viciously and very negatively. Okay, for that matter, for you to say, tell a black person back then, a lot of them, not saying all, that we are from Africa, and so on and so forth. A lot of them would get very angry and very, very, very perturbed. So, you know, and there's a lot of situations that happen, let's just say, are not really worth bringing up when you watch those old movies, especially when it comes to like artists who became successful and stuff, and how they reacted to those things. So it's definitely something that's been around for a long time, you know, especially when you take in consideration this was way before any African immigrants started to go in the United States, you know, for that matter. Okay, you know, at least a good portion of them started to come into America. So this is definitely something, just with evidence right there, that's been around for a long time. And of course, vice versa, Africans having a negative view of African Americans. So that's the truth of the matter. So that is why we don't get along on both sides. Now, of course, the question, of course, that's obviously the elephant in the room here, you know, yeah, well, not even an elephant in the room, just this freaking solution is, what can we do to actually get along? Well, the simple thing to obviously for us to get along, the first thing to obviously bring up to get along is simply first and foremost realize that we need each other. Okay, as the truth of the matter is, no matter how you look at it, in one way shape or form, we need each other. God forbid a race war were to break out in America, we would all have to go back to Africa. Okay, as black people, we white people have already made it clear that a lot of them, for that matter, not all, but a lot of them made it clear they don't like black people, yet at the same time they constantly steal our music and culture from us when you look at the history books. And they've been doing this for the longest time. They like our music, for specifically our music, but they hate us. You know, so the truth of the matter is they don't like um African American. A lot of them don't like African Americans, and it wouldn't take much of a situation for us to go back to Africa because it's not safe anymore. And a lot of Africans need African Americans because they have more money and more knowledge on how to do things and how to solve problems and so on and so forth. So it's definitely That is the first thing to take into consideration. And also, secondly, of course, no longer making jokes and disrespecting each other for that matter, okay? Because in the end of the day, we're the same people, okay? No matter how you look at it, we literally are the same people. All of us on both sides, you know, at least mostly from most part, of course, particularly on the African diaspora side, we all have relatives in Africa, and most Africans have relatives in African diaspora. So that's the truth of the matter. We're the same people exactly. All this crap about, oh, it's been such a long time literally doesn't make any sense. You can still tell by our features we are of African descent, us in African diaspora and stuff. So the truth of the matter is that is the truth of the matter. We are the same people. So hating and getting angry about that is stupid. So anyway, this is my video, and simply put it, I hope you enjoyed it. Just remember, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. It was nice talking to you, and that's all. Later.